Good afternoon, friends. We are back again to discuss on the concept of STD and the implementation thereof. Control on sharing of unpublished price-sensitive information, UPSI as it is called, by those who are having access to it in a structured manner is a sensitive area dealt with by the SEBI Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations. Incidentally, SEBI had issued a circular way back in 2019, July 2019, making certain amendments in the PIT regulation, which warranted a company to maintain, all the listed companies to maintain structured digital database. However, it could not be implemented because of COVID, and later on in August 2022, both the stock exchanges issued a circular requesting all the companies, listed companies, to have it complied with. The circular related to maintenance of STD. We also at the institute, we had two webinars held on 17th and 18th August, where we had Varsha ji and Kanti Sir Desai, who was very much instrumental in this concept of STD, which we brought out, and that brought some clarity to the members in terms of what needs to be done. The option was there for the compliance officer to do the certification on a quarterly basis, and the alternate was the compliance of the company would also appoint a company secretary in practice. So this, for the compliance officer as well as the PCS, came in handy in terms of what needs to be done as far as the certification is concerned. Subsequently, we also had the president constituted a small group, and we have two of the group members here, both Mr. Sudhakar and Mr. Narayan Shankar, who are here with us, and they will be taking us, they will give their views on the matter. And we prepared a manual, which was subsequently released, and it is there on the website of the institute. Let's understand the entire concept is a evolving manner, and therefore we expect a lot more changes needs to be made on the manual, which has been put up on the website of the institute. We will do it, and which will be based on the interaction which our panelists are going to have with the members as well. We also have with us today Varsha Agarwal. She is not new. She has been with us on all the 4 STD webinars which has been held by the institute. And we also have Mr. Gopal Krishna Iyer from BSc, apart from the 2 panelists, Mr. Sudhakar and Narayan Shankar. And I also have with me 2 of my colleagues in the council, Ms. Rupanjana De from Kolkata and Mr. Manoj Purbe from Delhi. And I'm sure they will be making note of all the inputs which is going to be given by the panelists and share it with the team in HO, which will be helpful in making changes to the manual. Incidentally, I can also tell you both NSC, BSc as well as SEBI have been reasonably comfortable with the manual, which a copy of which has already been given to them. Having said this, I now hand over the proceedings to my colleague Rupanjana to take it further. Thank you and wish you good learning during the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Narasimha. Thank you.
Rupanjana. Rupanjana?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you. A very good afternoon. And it's my privilege to be moderating the session. Unpublished price-sensitive information, or UPSI, which a very good background has been provided by our Vice President, Mr. B. Narasimhan. Like it's being dealt with the SEBI Prohibition of Insider Trading Regulations 2015. Now, once this UPSI is being shared, the company loses, the control over that important information and how and to whom all it is being shared. Now, to control this, SEBI had come up with the concept of SDD back in 2018, and then amendments were made as Mr. Narasimhan mentioned, which were made effective from July 2020. Now, under the amended regulations, companies need to keep a trail of sharing of UPSI so that in cases of any breach, the investigation on it may be carried out properly. Company secretaries, by virtue of being the compliance officer under the PIT regulations, have the important responsibility on their shoulder of complying with and monitoring adherence to the regulations. Also, the stock exchanges, with the intent to ensure compliance, ask listed companies to submit quarterly compliance certificates, as Mr. Narasimhan has already mentioned. So now this is why the Institute, in furtherance of its continuous endeavors, has organized such a capacity building event program. This is the second one on SDD. We had one last week also. The first one was held on 21st of March. That was last week. So today we are having the second webinar on SDD, and I hope the webinar would provide numerous takeaways for all the participants. The Institute has invited members from the regulators, the stock exchanges, and members from our own very profession. So friends, I feel privileged to introduce now to all of you our experts. Please welcome Ms. Varsha Agarwal, who's the General Manager, Integrated Surveillance Department of Securities and Exchange Board of India. Ms. Varsha Agarwal has worked with SEBI for the last 20 years. She works with the Integrated Surveillance Department of SEBI. Prior to that, she has worked in the Market Regulations Department, Mutual Funds Division, in the Investment Management Department, and in the regional office in Delhi. She has played a role in handling of insider trading cases. She has handled policy of depositories, inspection and administration of stock exchanges, formulation of policy on mutual funds, and has also handled matters related to collective investment schemes dealt by SEBI. She holds an MA in economics and is also a chartered accountant and a company secretary by profession. I welcome you, madam. Our next speaker, I don't know, should we go ahead with the speakers individually, or should I just introduce all the speakers first and then go one by one?
Hey, introduce all the speakers, please go ahead.
Okay, so our next speaker would be Sri Gopal Krishnan Iyer, Chief General Manager, Listing Compliance of BSE Limited. Sri Gopal Krishnan Iyer is a qualified chartered accountant and a CFA from ICFI. He has more than 30 years of experience in the field of capital market. He is with the exchange since 1998, which is roughly more than 24 years, and has handled many departments. So he was on deputation to the CDSL in his formative years. Later, he handled listing, member compliance, broker supervision, investor services, and exchange compliance. He is currently heading the listing compliance and legal regulatory. He is also a member of many subgroups of SEBI. I welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is CS S. Sudhakar, Chief Consultant with Mehta & Mehta, a corporate legal firm. CS S. Sudhakar is an FCA and an FCS, and is also a qualified company secretary, qualified secretary from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of UK. And he's also a law graduate from the Mumbai University with over 4 decades of wide spectrum experience in legal, secretarial, finance, and accounts fields. Mr. Sudhakar has worked with Reliance Industries as Vice President, Corporate Secretarial for 17 glorious years. And prior to that, he was with the Berger Paints India Limited for about 15 years as Senior General Manager, Finance and Accounts, apart from other companies also. Presently, Mr. Sudhakar is associated with Mehta & Mehta as a chief consultant. Mr. Sudhakar has addressed more than 800 workshops, seminars, conferences, training programs, and webinars organized by ICSI, ICAI, ICWAI, and several chambers of commerce. I welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is CS Narayan Shankar, Vice President and Company Secretary, Mahindra & Mahindra Limited. CS Narayan Shankar is an associate member of the ICSI and holds a bachelor's degree in commerce and a degree in law from the University of Mumbai. He has over 25 years of rich experience in the field of corporate laws and legal affairs. Mr. Shankar joined Mahindra & Mahindra Limited in 2001 and is currently holding the position of Executive Vice President and Company Secretary. He heads the secretarial compliance function for the entire Mahindra Group and is also a director on the boards of various companies of the Mahindra Group. During his stint at the Mahindra & Mahindra, the company has twice been honored with the Golden Peacock Award for Best Corporate Governance, once at the national level and recently also at the international level. Mr. Narayan Shankar has played a very important role in raising the corporate governance standards of M&M to its current level. I welcome you, sir. I'm sure the discussions in this webinar would serve as a very good intellectual platform for the participants to understand the complexity of SDD and help the entire fraternity of company secretaries. So once again, I warmly welcome all of you and wishing you a very happy learning. So if I may invite Mrs. Varsha Agarwal to take up from here. I would just mention one thing that we will have each speaker speaking for 15 minutes. And once all of them have done, we'll take up questions. So, Ma'am Varsha Agarwal, please.
Thank you so much, madam. I want to thank ICSI for giving me another opportunity to present my thoughts on this very interesting topic of structured digital database. There has been a series of initiatives I'll appreciate that has been done by ICSI on this topic. Even we appreciated the effort that have been put in coming out with the manual, which is there for everybody's use. So ICSI is playing a large part in making this implementation of SDD a reality. So I'll again thank ICSI for that. Before I start my talk on this subject, I want to clarify one thing, that last week we had one seminar on this same topic, wherein as what I felt was there was some kind of commingling or some, what do I say, people are mixing two things. That is what I felt, structured digital database and system-driven disclosure. Many of the questions I felt were related to system-driven disclosure and that were being channeled towards this program. So all the participants, I want to make it clear, these are two different concepts. System-driven disclosure is different and structured digital database is different. And right now, we are addressing the issues that the listed companies or proposed to be listed companies are facing in maintaining and implementing the structured digital database. So after that, I'll start with the background, how this concept came into place. As someone pointed out earlier, that there was a fair market conduct committee which was constituted way back in around 2017 or 18, so which came out with the concept that there has to be a digital database on sharing of this unpublished price sensitive information, because this information passes from one person to another person. So everybody who is receiving or who is passing the information, their details, their names should be captured in a proper digital database. By digital database, we don't want anybody to maintain the database in Excel. Excel, we are not considering that as SDD. It has to be a proper digital database which is in compliance with the requirement of maintenance of digital. This SDD has been built in the regulations, SEBI PIT 2015. Regulation 3536 are specific to maintenance of SDD. So maintenance of SDD is supposed to be in compliance with the regulations. There is no leeway. There is no other way you can maintain the SDD in any other form. It has to be maintained with a proper audit trail, with time stamping, and 8 years you are supposed to maintain that database. People come up with exemptions. Okay, I'm running this kind of business, I'm this kind of company, so I may be given some exemption. But there is no exemption as of now from the regulations. We have come across, because my fellow panelists will be covering more of these things in detail. I just want to touch upon the basics, and they will be covering better, I feel, on practically how they are dealing with these concepts. I'm just giving you a broad concept on what is the struggle which we face if structure SDD is not maintained by the company. A case which I highlighted in my earlier talk also, there was one case which was handled by SEBI, wherein a very big deal was cracked by one particular listed company. I'm not taking the name here. Big deal was done with some other participant. That deal was not entered in the SDD, but some people made good profit. And when we asked the company, they were saying, no, it is not required to be made. It is not as per our turnover. It's not such a big deal and all. So don't go by this concept. If anything is there, it may be something relating to your acquisitions, your mergers, whatever deals you are doing, whatever financial results or whatever. If it is affecting the price of your security, so don't hesitate to err on the side of caution. You enter, because if you don't enter and regulator starts the investigation on any particular case, and when we seek the detail from the company, and if it is not provided, then the situation is not good for any listed company. So that is why we are coming forward in all these programs, that to again insist that this is the requirement that has been laid down in regulations. So please take it seriously, and don't think that because I am not aware of this particular reason or that particular reason, I am not clear on this thing. So that is why I am not maintaining it, or I am not maintaining it in proper form. It has to be maintained, and it's high time. It came into the regulation in 2019. It's been 4 years. So nowhere the regulator gives so much of time for any compliance of the regulations. So please don't take any chances. Don't take things lightly. And when we started monitoring, and it came to be part of PIT regulation in 2019, and after that some amendment was made in 2020, and after that COVID came. After COVID, when SEBI started looking into the compliance status of the company, listed company, the proposed to be listed companies regarding the maintenance of SDD, it was very poor. It was not in a good shape. So finally, we discussed with stock exchanges, and we told them to start the process. And for that, see, we have gone step by step. We have still, every time we are just urging you people to start maintaining. First, we started with extensive training programs, in which stock exchanges and ICSI also played a very major role. Stock exchanges tried to cover all the listed companies either through virtual training or through some programs, videos, and whatever. After that, when we thought, okay, now it's time to see how much education has helped and what is the status of compliance, when we asked the stock exchanges to start issuing that format, lot of resistance came from the companies regarding that format also. But format is just a formality. If format or no format, SDD has to be maintained, and it has to be maintained as per the requirement of the regulations. So don't go into those details, what exchange is seeking is correct or not correct or whatever. You can pick 10 mistakes in that format, doesn't matter. But that doesn't allow anybody to not to maintain. So always think towards maintaining. That is my only thing. And second thing, now as per the new development, it has become part of the secretarial audit. So now the secretarial audit will be monitoring in every secretarial audit process how your SDD is being maintained. So they will be issuing a certificate on that. So make sure it is maintained and it is maintained as per the requirement of the regulations. That's it from my side. My fellow panelist will cover further things on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would request our next speaker, Shri Gopal Krishnan Iyer, Chief General Manager, Listing Compliance of BSc Limited, to please deliberate.
Thanks, Rupanjana. And so Varsha has made my talk a little easier by giving the perspective of what the regulator is expecting. So what I'm going to cover is what has been the exchange's role in monitoring this particular requirement at the behest of SEBI, and where we are today on SDD compliance. So as Varsha has said that it was in 2021 that SEBI had asked the exchanges to carry out a pilot on this SDD provisions, which came into effect from 1st of April 2019. And that's when both the exchanges carried out a pilot with 20 companies each. And the results were very, very, very poor. So in terms of compliance. So many of the companies, it seemed, never took it seriously on compliance, because many of them did not even have an SDD in place, a structured digital database in place. So which was about 2.5 years down the line of post SEBI. So that made it pretty serious for the regulator to take cognizance of this fact. And that's when exchanges had to step in to provide the trainings and sensitize the companies. And we covered all the companies, I mean, through webinars and this, so that companies are sensitized about the importance of maintaining this database, SDD database. And post that, we are seeing now, when we started monitoring since last June, based on the quarterly compliance being given by the company secretaries on basically the points that are covered under regulation 3.5 and 3.6 of insider trading regulations. Now, even when we started off with that, many of the companies have not filed. Many of them have filed. Many of them have used it as a tick box to just say that they are in compliance with the requirement, not clearly indicating whether those are truthful statements being made. So that's when SEBI said that we need to do much more than these quarterly filings that are being submitted by the companies. So exchanges must initiate a verification of the SDD database, wherein at least 1,000 companies is what we need to cover by March 31st, and wherein we had about 400 companies to which we did a physical verification by going to the company website, a company site, physical site, and then sitting with the compliance officers or those maintaining the structured digital database and seeing whether they are in compliance, they are maintaining it in compliance with the requirements of the regulations. And we've done 600 virtual verifications. So that's how we have covered 1,000 companies. It was quite a challenging task that we had to cover about 1,000 companies in 5 months of time, since we started in November of 2022. But we are happy to say that we've got good cooperation from companies, and we've been able to achieve what we had set out to. And during this process, there have been a lot of learnings, even for the exchange, even understanding the pain points of the companies or where they are missing out on some of the compliances. So some of the observations that we've had, I'll just share so that companies can take steps to rectify those if those are being adopted at their end. So one thing that we have found was that the entries with respect to sharing of the UPSI information within the organization was not being made, even though it is a requirement under the regulation that you will need to enter the details of the person with whom you are sharing this information, be it insider or outsider. So you need to maintain these details. Merely stating that the designated person is covered or is covered under the trading window closure period, that will not suffice, because this is specific to say whether a person is in possession or not will be known only when his name is indicated against the UPSI. Otherwise, if a company has got 10,000 employees and 1,000 of them are covered under DPs, then this would mean that 1,000 of them had this information, which is not correct. So that is why you need to be specific on, if you're sharing it internally, then that person name should be recorded as the person who's in possession of that particular UPSI. The second thing that we had an issue was that companies were maintaining SDD server on cloud. Now, whether cloud is an appropriate place, but SEBI had issued an FAQ which said that it cannot be maintained on cloud. But post that, we've had discussions with companies. SEBI has discussion. We've had to understand from the corporate side as to what are the pitfalls of maintaining or what are the advantages of maintaining this on cloud. So we've received representations from the industry. So that is being considered, and there will be a clarification which will be issued in some time on the maintenance of SDD on cloud. And then the third one was that the entries were not being made on real-time basis, or sometimes it is observed that it is made post the UPSI is in the public domain. Now, this is something which should be avoided, because as SEBI has clearly indicated that they are going to depend into this database to find out as to who is the person who was in possession of a particular UPSI. Now, if the entry itself is not made on time, then it's going to be very difficult for the regulators to know who was in possession of the UPSI. So it has to be, the entry has to be made on near real-time basis, or as maybe appropriate, but not too late that some of the information may be missed out from this database. And definitely making an entry post UPSI in public domain is a clear non-compliance with the requirement, because it has to be there in the database before. In fact, it should be there at the time of what we would say from the germination of that UPSI. Now, that's a particular thing that we need to discuss as to what would be the germination point. But at least when a particular information is a UPSI germinates, then it becomes important that it finds its place in the SDD database, so that the regulators are clearly aware at any point in time. Even the company also is aware that this particular information is something which is going to be actively taken up by the company, and this is a potential UPSI. And then at that point in time onwards, any sharing of information relating to that particular UPSI becomes sensitive and very important. And the other thing that we have observed is that the audit trail was not being maintained, or there is partial audit trail with respect to the records, and there are no records relating to the alterations that are made. Now, this is clearly a non-compliance with respect to the regulation. So you will need to make companies that have not incorporated this particular aspect into the SDD, then they need to incorporate this. Otherwise, it would be a violation of the regulation requirement. And maintaining data in Excel sheet, definitely not warranted. It is not a database at all. Okay, non-tamperability, time stamping, and audit trail, these are all clearly not possible in Excel, and that's not a database. So you, as Varsha has said, that we need to have a database which would record all these information. And the last one which we had was with respect to physical server, which is maintained outside of India. So this is something, again, we are deliberating on. The requirement is that the server should be maintained internally. Now internally, whether it would mean within the control of company or physical location. So that we are still we may have some clarification on that. So these are some of the observations that we have made, which we have also pointed out to these companies, so that they can go back and rectify with respect to the observations that were made during our inspection of the SDD database, so that at least by March, these companies can rectify and be compliant with the regulations. Now, we've posed discussions with SEBI. We've also had made certain filings now mandatory, like the annual secretarial compliance report. We have already issued the circular that will also very specifically mention compliance with SDD requirement now. So all the requirements under regulation 3.5 and 3.6 will have to be covered by the secretarial auditor when he is giving in the compliance report. And now this is applicable only to those companies to which corporate governance provision, that is 15 to 27, is applicable. So companies which are not covered under ASCR, to which the regulation 24A of LODR is not applicable, those companies will submit the quarterly compliance report as is being done right now. So this is something which will have to be taken into account by the companies. So sum and substance, this is a pretty important regulation, and which is seriously looked into by the regulator. Exchanges have a role in monitoring the compliance of these requirements that they have maintained as per the requirements of the regulation, and we would continue to support SEBI on these issues. So this is as far as what exchanges have done, exchanges role in that. So I would stop here, and probably we can take up questions. What would be the whatever doubts the fraternity would have with respect to this maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iyer. It was a beautiful deliberation. And yes, we will have questions once all the speakers are done. Also, thanks, Varsha ma'am. So I would now invite Mr. S. Sudhakar, CS Sudhakar, to deliberate on the topic.
Thanks very much, Rupanjana. Good evening, participants. At the outset, my sincere thanks and gratitude to Institute of Company Secretaries for giving me this opportunity to express some of my views on such an important and complex subject. In fact, both the regulators have brought the seriousness of the topic as well as the subject. And unfortunately, they have expressed the displeasure that the fraternity is not up to, discharging its obligations and responsibilities up to the expectations. No doubt about it that this particular system, this SDD, is in place from 2019. But we have our COVID complexities after that. That might be one of the reasons why this particular issue was not taken that seriously. And apart from that thing, no doubt about it, structural digital database and apart from that, bit regulations itself is a very complex subject. Unfortunately or fortunately, the human tendency is whatever it is complex, we always keep it aside and we will handle it at a later stage. But my experience is that whatever we avoid or whatever we defer, it will haunt you one day or the other, and it will come back with vigor and vitality. This is the case as far as the SDD is concerned. In fact, Institute has taken a very, in fact, Mr. Narasimhan, the credit has to be given to him. He has led this, he formed a subcommittee as far as SDD is concerned under the leadership of Makaran Joshi. We all have worked together, brought the complexities and discussed it at threadbare and brought a manual. Unfortunately or fortunately, these kind of guidance note manuals, whenever they have been brought in by the institute, a very lackadaisical attitude has been taken by the fraternity. Especially because why I'm saying this thing is, I am fully experienced as far as the secretarial standards are concerned, and the guidance notes what have been brought by the Institute of Company Secretaries on several complex subjects. And one of the guidance note is on PIT regulations also. I know the amount of efforts what we have put in while we were bringing the guidance note on the PIT regulations. Recently, in one of the forums, when I asked this question, in fact, with all due regard, some of the people are not even aware of that there is a guidance note on PIT regulations. If that is the scenario, it will be very difficult, and I am very happy in one way. The regulators have given the right message to us, whether we are in practice or whether we are in service. We have to understand the importance of ensuring this particular compliance impeccably. Otherwise, we are going to invite serious trouble, both for ourselves as well as for our organizations. In fact, right from the beginning, I used to say that, several times I said this, of late, the laws are becoming very complex. And as far as PIT regulations are concerned, right from the beginning, they are very complex regulations. And especially in case of handling UPSI is concerned, it is not less than handling a fire. One need to be very careful while handling fire or UPSI, because according to me, the repercussions of mishandling are very severe and damaging. It is a responsibility of the compliance officer, who is the company secretary, to ensure impeccable compliances as far as the PIT regulations are concerned. And there are several important provisions are there, significant provisions are there, right? Like your code of conduct, window closure, pre-clearance, contra trade, disclosures, filings, so many things. And each and every word of PIT regulations are having its own nuances and its own complexities. One need to understand, one need to read this very thoroughly. And especially the company secretaries who are working for listed companies and who are having secretarial audits of listed companies, they need to take this as a special assignment and have to handle that. Because in case of leakage of any UPSI, the primary importance is to trace the person who is the culprit of that particular thing. In one way, we are happy that because of this digital database, the job of the company secretary to a large extent is systematized and structured. Otherwise, he would have been the first person who will be blamed that what sort of internal controls you have established, the information was leaked, and we are not able to put our finger there. But now, courtesy the structural digital database, the audit trail is very much available, and it is very easy for the people concerned to handle or to trace the persons from where the information was leaked. I always used to say that in Secretarial Standard 1, if you remember, when the invitees are attending the board meetings, there is a mandate that the attendance of the invitees is also to be taken. Initially, there were several objections were there that why the attendance sheets are required for the invitees. And even though it was a question even for the directors also, why the attendance is required, sheets are to be signed by them. Recently, about 2 weeks before also, one of the senior company secretaries asked me the same question. In the Secretarial Standard, why this provision is there? My answer to that was the same. God forbids if any information is leaked, which was discussed in the boardroom, within hours, how you will be hold the response and how you will make a person responsible. There are so many invitees might be there in the boardroom who got the access to the boardroom. And at what stage and what person have leaked that, how we will be able to come to know, where is the LEB? So for that, in fact, the attendance of the people is very, very important. And that's why in the guidance note of SS1, it is very clearly mentioned that the invitees, if whoever are there, they have to sign the attendance register. And in fact, some of them might be attending not the entire board meeting or a particular item only. that point of time, in the minute also, we have to mention that the particular invitee was there only for that particular agenda item. In fact, I used to go for a further step of this thing, that whenever any of our colleagues used to attend the board meetings, I used to suggest that whenever you are signing the attendance register, don't blindly sign the attendance register, but do mention that if you are not there throughout the meeting, mention that particular agenda item for which you are there. Because God forbids tomorrow, if any information is leaked, one of the source documents apart from SDD is this also, by whenever the board meetings have taken place, who are the people attended the meeting, what is the duration of their attendance, which items of the agenda they were attended, all these things will come into picture. So ICSI is doing, according to me, an exceedingly good job by creating an awareness about this kind of complex subjects, not only creating awareness, but also holding these kind of video conferences, webinars, and coming out with proper guidance notes also, And as far as the other things are concerned, I'm going to talk mainly about the responsibilities of the compliance officer only. What exactly is the compliance officer has to do, both the regulators have explicitly explained to us in clear terms without mentioning any words. It seems that definitely a lot of work is to be done. We have to pull up our socks and we have to ensure the compliances and we have to meet the expectations of the regulators. And though it is the responsibility of the board or the heads of the organizations who have to make the entries in the SDD, but please remember that it is at the end of the day, it is the compliance officer who will be held responsible. So according to me, the compliance officer has to sensitize all the senior management at the board level, senior management, and all the designated persons about the importance of the PIT regulations, about the importance of structural digital database, about the importance of the unpublished price sensitive information, how the information is to be shared, and when the information is to be shared, and what kind of a record is to be maintained, so that the audit trial can take place as and when it is required. So creating the awareness among the people are very, very important, because until the persons who are concerned with the legalities, others may not be having that kind of an importance they may give as far as the compliances are concerned. So it is the responsibility of the compliance officer to sensitize the people across the organization. He may have to hold workshops, he may have to hold training programs, or he may have to, bring somewhere whenever any interesting case laws or anything is happening. He has to spread that awareness among the organization so that people can understand the importance of the compliances, what are required. Apart from that thing, another important segment is that audit committee. Audit committee also is having a responsibility under the PIT regulations, under especially regulation 9A4, that it is this audit committee which has to ensure that adequate internal controls and adequate compliance mechanism and robust what's called as SOPs are there as far as the PIT regulations are concerned. Any kind of lapses, any kind of non-compliances have to be brought to the notice of the audit committee, and audit committee has to dispassionately deal with them, and wherever and whatever the penal provisions are to be initiated or triggered, they have to be done. And at the same point of time, audit committee also have to review the systems periodically, if not at least once in a year, if not more. And especially considering the importance of this SDD, according to me, I was reading somewhere that one of the important accountabilities and responsibilities of the company secretary is, he is the bridge between the regulator and the boards. He has to explain the expectations of the regulator to the boards, and the board has to in turn instruct the management to ensure the compliances, to initiate the compliance culture in the organization, and to also create a robust compliance structure in the organization. So today, after attending this particular webinar, as far as I am concerned, I have realized that we are not operating the way we are expected to operate as far as the regulators are concerned. In fact, in 2018, the SEBI chairman has mentioned about secretarial audit, more or less on such terms. And after that, there was a lot of improvement has been come out as far as secretarial audits are concerned. And I'm sure that within no time, we will gear up fully, and ICSI is also taking a lot of initiatives, and we will be in place very soon. And wherever and whenever we have to update the manual, this subcommittee, whichever is there already in place, we will work further. Any kind of hand-holding is required by the colleagues, by the fraternity. They may write to the institute so that we can be in touch with the regulator in case of any unavoidable difficulties are there. And I'm very confident that especially SEBI and exchanges are very kind, and they understand the difficulties of the corporates. And several times they have proved that wherever the kind of remedial, what's called as big checks and balances are to be taken, it has, I mean, that the amendments are to be taken, they have been initiated. I will give a pause here, and as and when the questions comes, we will deal with that. Thank you very much, Rupanjana.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sudhakar. I would now just a minute.
Rupanjana, Narayan Shankar here. I am starting.
Yeah,
I'm mindful of the time because we have to start the FAQs also. So, friends,
Mr. Narayan Shankar, please start, and we'll have the questions later, please.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, friends, I think Narasimhan, Varsha, my dear friend Gopi and Sudhakar have already laid the basis. My job becomes much more easier. But today, I'm only going to touch on two things: linkages of Regulation 30 of LODR with UPSI, and the key term used by Gopi is when is UPSI germinated. And if you get, I'm just trying to give a glimpse by touching upon 2 or 3 case laws. When is UPSI germinated? So let's start the very first as to saying that is every disclosure under Regulation 30 of LODR needs to be entered in SDD, and what is it? As you are aware, what is the definition of UPSI? Any information relating to the company, securities, directly, indirectly, not generally available, upon becoming generally available, is likely to materially affect the price of the security. Correct? If you see, UPSI is an inclusive definition, and it says it shall ordinarily include but not restricted information relating to financial results, dividends, change in capital structure, mergers, demergers, acquisition, change in KMP. In 1st April 2019, the last term in the inclusive definition was material events in accordance with the listing regulation. That was deleted from the PIT regulation. So just trying to tell you what was the logic. The logic was all material events which are required to be disclosed as per LODR need not necessarily be UPSI and the PIT regulations. And what is the second logic? See, there is also a reason why the definition is prefixed by the term ordinarily, correct? This is to allow parties to adduce factual evidence, disprove and review the price sensitivity of certain corporate actions. If you see, 1 minute. If you see many of the disclosures which we make under the LODR, whether it is notice, call letters, change in directors, auditors, proceedings of AGM and EGM, amendments to memorandum, schedule of analyst meet, these are all important for disclosure, but none of these call for closure of trading window or entry in SDD, correct? So what you have to understand the difference. Closure of trading window is at the time of initiation of the project. In fact, trading window closure ends when disclosure is made plus 48 hours. So most important point, all trading window closure would invariably lead to SE disclosures. But all Regulation 30 disclosures need not be UPSI and PIT. And if not UPSI, it neither warrants trading window closure nor an entry in the SDD. But it is for the company to do proper reconciliation and to have a documented approach as to why both quantitative and qualitative as to what they treat is material, both from the perspective of a different yardstick for closure of trading window as well as disclosure. In fact, very difficult to get any bright line test in this regard. So I think we should be mindful and thank SEBI that In November, they came with a materiality, broad guidance on materiality, where they say if the value or impact on a transaction is, if it crosses lower of 2% of the turnover, 2% of the net worth, or 5% of the 3-year average absolute value of profit or tax, then you can consider it as material. So you can broadly take a feel, have your materiality guidelines internally, clearly, which is more stringent on this, and don't make it too liberal, which will come and haunt you at a particular time. The next is, when does UPSI get germinated? The start and end date. But this is one of the most important perspective which we need to say. And many a times we feel that there is generally a misnomer that UPSI and SDD is only related to financial statements. Answer is certainly no. As you're aware, it's an inclusive dividend, inclusive definition, and financial results are only one of them. So that in terms of entry in SDD, see into various, besides financial results and dividend, if there is change in capital structure, change in KMPs, mergers, demergers, acquisition, disposal, expansion of business, major business deals transaction. In fact, I will go to the extent of even estimated there are major bad debts or impairment being made and which will have an impact PNL. Please look into all that. Planning for bonus, rights, buyback, a whole lot of things. So first, let us peel the onion with regard to financial statements. As you are aware, with regard to financial statements, at what stage entry is required to be made? Companies have got different practices. Some companies actually close the financial quarter before itself. They consider those as UPSI, and this may commence before, but at no point of time it can go beyond the close of the financial year. So as soon as UPSI gets generated, you have to enter it. As far as financial results are concerned, trading restriction shall be made applicable from the end of the quarter till 48 hours after the results, correct? So beyond the end of the quarter, companies do not have a leeway to postpone it beyond, and at that time you have to enter. Many a time, as you're aware, in large companies, then no longer there is exchange of financial results on email. So mere access to SAP or ERP system, which is in the nature of UPSI, needs to be recorded in the SDD. One-time recording of such details would be sufficient. Similarly, when the auditors get access to the SAP ERP, even they would need to enter the same. Now coming to, when does UPSI get germinated in other transactions? UPSI gets germinated where the probability of going ahead with the information, the transaction or event, is higher than not going ahead, and such information is likely to affect the price of the securities. Okay, so let us go through 2 or 3 case laws of SEBI to just give you a feel as to when UPSI gets germinated. This is case law number 1, where there is acquisition of one farm. This is in the pharma sector, one pharma company acquiring the other. In this, there was an important portion of the SEBI order which says that when you are doing an acquisition, agreement with the promoter or controlling shareholder of the target is an important factor, because without the consent of the control shareholder in control, ownership and management, no deal can be taken. So in this particular case, the controlling shareholder, after probably looking into the various presentation, came to a conclusion and wrote a letter or an email to the acquirer to say that that we have gone through all your presentations. Can we have the timelines for closure of the deal? At this particular stage, the regulator came to a view that the controlling shareholder, as we call as the father of the bride, has agreed to the acquirer's proposal to acquire the target company, and hence on that day, information becomes price sensitive. In fact, it's a very nice judgment which peels the onion as to what stage unpublished information becomes unpublished price sensitive information. Okay, so till the time it is disclosed, it is UPSI period. Let us go to case number 2. Here is a case of 2 pharma companies having a license and supply agreement. What was the allegation? Non-closure of trading window for UPSI, delay in disclosure, and while UPSI was not made public, there was creeping acquisition made by promoters while in possession of UPSI. Okay, so what was the stand taken by the company? The stand taken by the company was such license and supply agreement was normal course of business. It is not material, not UPSI. There is no need for trading window closure. And hence, since it is non-UPSI, the promoters are allowed to do creeping acquisition, which is allowed under SAST. But when the regulator went through the press release made by the company, it told a different story. The press release had a mention to say that it's an expansion of the medicines in certain countries. It says that it will dramatically change the company's product portfolio. In fact, it went to say that the sale of established products was 10 billion, and with this, it would go to 500 billion. It is more than 10x. So hence, if you're taking a call that it is not sensitive, it is not material for trading window closure and entry in SDD, all your other wings in terms of your media communication, everything will also have to talk the same language. You cannot take one sort of a decision when it comes to SDD and UPSI and other decision when it comes to telling the market a different story. In this particular stock case, when this went into public, the stock rose by almost 15%. And that was on a day when the Sensex and Nifty closed almost 4% down. Let's go to case number 3. The case number 3 is a case where SEBI has very nicely come with a 3-bucket theory of how UPSI gets germinated. SEBI said, then this regulator has beautifully peeled the onion of saying that UPSI goes through 3 buckets. For bucket number 1, timelines when parties are open discussion. Bucket number 2 is what we claim as UPSI period, and third is final signing. Okay. So what is the difference between the company and SEBI? The companies try to put the UPSI between bucket number 2 and 3, and the regulator wants us to probably do it between bucket number 1 and 2. What is bucket number 1? Bucket number 1, the regulator says, where discussions are exploratory in nature, information generated at this stage is imprecise, without a reasonable probability of the transaction going through, without any specific details. Okay. What is bucket number 2? Bucket number 2, the regulator has in this particular says where there is high degree of crystallization. It proceeds towards greater degree of crystallization, reasonable probability of transaction going through. And every day it inches towards higher and higher degree of correctness. And it is done in a very structured way by resolving issues. During this bucket number 2 or the UPSI period, with each passing day, unresolved issues are being ironed out. Outcome of the transaction moves towards higher degree of correctness. Discussions are centered around resolution of specific issues. Of course, it can never be said with 100% certainty what will be the outcome. There will still be room for parties to change their mind, modify the decision till the time decision has been publicly announced. Here it was very nice. One of the points which the regulator has given, and which is really quite an eye-opener for us to say that merely because in this case, there are 40 plus items that were yet to be finalized. It cannot be said that because there are so many items, it is an indication of the first bucket. Because the regulator says negotiation will always represent a series of steps taken by the respective teams on deal and senior management of either side, and every day these are resolved. In this particular case, even emails were scanned. The tone and tenor of this emails was also scanned, and hence certainty of information can only be measured in terms of probability and correctness. In fact, on one particular day, the PR teams of both the companies also got involved. And the regulator says that if PR and Q&A is now being discussed, definitely it has crossed and it has come into UPSI bucket. And now you cannot say it is still in the initial bucket number 1. In fact, when emails were taken, many of the emails talked of speak with you as we work to close our collaboration agreement this way or this week. And so SEBI observed the tone and tenure of the emails to understand whether it is bucket 1 or bucket 2, correct? So hence, from this one point we have to get as compliance officer, requirement of UPSI period does not mean that there is no possibility of failure of deal. UPSI periods cannot and ought not be when the deal will 100% go through. That is something which will not be accepted by the regulator. And hence, when you're talking, when UPSI gets germinated specifically for entry in SDD, look into the nature of the transaction, progress of the discussion, outcome of various stages of negotiation, increasing probability of transaction going through. As you're aware, every of the speaker earlier has highlighted the importance. Advocacy has been happened. The regulator has been very, very patient till now. And now comes their circular of 25th Jan 2023, where they have now said that even now, after all the advocacy, if we find companies not complying with 3.5 and 3.6, we will be left with no other move other than naming and shaming. And how is it going to be done? In the get code page of the exchange website, they are going to display the name of the company and the compliance officer name also, as the company and the compliance officer who is not in compliance with 3.5 and 3.6. And this will be kept in the exchange website till the exchanges have satisfactorily verified that the company has completely complied with 3.5 and 3.6. Gopi has already touched upon, both Varsha and Gopi have touched upon 16th March circular, where additional affirmation by the PCS will include 3.5 and 3.6. I have already touched upon the materiality threshold, both in terms of quantitative of the 2% of the turnover net worth or average profits. Please take, very rare to get good guideline or bright line test, take the best out of it. And more importantly, now is the time to you to ensure that all the checks and balances for SDD are there. Ensure SDD is maintained internally, no third-party access, non-tampering, there is proof, declaration taken on a quarterly basis from all the head of departments of the company involved, whether it is a project base for SDD maintenance, whether it is financial results, that they have entered it in the UPSI. Record transmission, like Gopi said, not only outside, but even within the organization. Ensure that each time a UPSI shared, a confidentiality notice is served, at least the basic thing with the confidentiality notice has to say that the information shared is UPSI. Maintain confidentiality, not to disclose, not to trade. But more importantly, one thing which people forget, which is important, which you need to put in the email, is recipient to obtain again the company's prior consent in case UPSI provided to such recipient is to be used for a purpose other than the legitimate purpose for which the company has provided UPSI. Let me give you an example. Suppose you have multiple subsidiaries, they all give you what is called FFC, fit for consolidation accounts for your consolidation. Why is it given? Because the holding company has a legitimate purpose or a performance of duty for consolidation. Hence, the recipient accounts department can only use that for consolidation. If they use it for any purpose other than that purpose, you have to come back again. Get into the duties and responsibilities attached to the receipt of insider information. Liability that attaches to misuse or unwarranted use of this UPSI. So Agar has already covered internal controls as well as matters relating to role of compliance officer. I just wanted to touch upon these aspects because I felt these are the two aspects where there is maximum non-clarity. Whether it is regulation 30 vis-a-vis UPSI or when is UPSI germinated in matters other than financial results. Hence, wanted to give you a broad feel of when is UPSI germinated. And once you have your internal processes right, for this purpose, the rest is going to be much easier because entry in the SDD is just going to follow through the process which you have set. This is all from my side and over to you for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Narayan Shankar. That was quite insightful. So we have a few questions. We have received a few questions already from our participants, and I would like to put forward two questions to start with. First is, if a company's trading is suspended by the stock exchange for the last 7 or even more years, and it is still suspended, in that case, does the company require SDD? So,
I think this is already cleared multiple times, even in the earlier, because it doesn't make a difference whether it is suspended. So long as it is a listed entity, you have to maintain SDD. I think that's very clear.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. And the next question is the annual budget of the company required to be entered into SDD? If so, will it restrict the person who have prepared, touched upon or approved the budget for dealing in securities all the time, as budget is for the entire year aggregated on quarterly basis?
So we have taken, even when we were doing the what you call, when we were doing the process manual, we had discussed this particular point in terms of saying that is budgets really UPSI? The answer is definitely no. Budgets and estimates are not UPSI. Okay, but when will it come near to a UPSI is at a time where the estimation is too close, what I can say, to the year which is going back. So if the estimates, for example, if it is right now in March and the estimates are for 31st March, it is too close to the year end, correct? And if it is too close to the year end, it takes the shape of what I can say, UPSI. And when it takes a shape of UPSI, you need to be careful, and you then have to ensure that confidentiality notice. And it is done in two aspects. One, the team which is involved in estimated financial results, they will have to close the window for them, make their entry. And when it is shared with the board members as part of the agenda, at that time, even the board members will have to be closed.
Thank you so much.
Just to add what Narayan Shankar has mentioned is that in case of the budget, what he has dealt with is the revenue budget. If there is a capital expenditure budget is there, and a substantial capital budget is prepared for expansion of the, the company's operations, that point of time, it may germinate into an UPSI and necessary action is to be taken.
Thank you so much. Mr. Saraswatula, I have a question for you.
All Sudhakar.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise people get confused.
Okay. So what are the consequences if the company has not yet started creating the SDD but has initiated in the month of March itself? So what about the September and December 2022 quarter certificate that needs to be submitted to BSE Listing Center?
See, according to me, due to any reason, if you have not made the entries in the past, that doesn't mean you will leave it blank altogether. But according to me, you have to make the entries now in the current date and have to give sufficient explanations, and whatever the consequences are there, if at all, they have to be borne about. But you cannot just leave it as it is.
Okay. Thank you so much. I would request my colleague, Mr. Manoj Kumar Purve, to ask a few questions that he might be having.
My question to Varsha ma'am. It's about the germination, because germination is a big question for everyone who's ever be dealing in this SDD. At what point of time we are making the UPSI as a germination point? So my question is, if any discussion is held within the management, that is issue of bonus, right share, when does it become UPSI? First point. Second question is, when the compliance officer shall send the legitimate notice for this thing. And third point, it is only a discussion, not confirming whether it will include in the board agenda or not. So these 3 points at this point, when we are going to make it the germinate one for SDD purpose.
See, like I covered in my submissions also, that first thing which we want to make it very clear, whenever you are in doubt, just make the entry. If you feel whether I should do it or not do it, no harm in making the entry. And second thing, regarding this bonus issue and whatever you just mentioned, if it is, as per my understanding, if it is affecting the price of the shares, then if the news gets leaked and it can affect the price of the shares, it has to be considered as UPSI and has to be entered in the SDD. If anybody wants to add anything on that, then they are more welcome.
Yeah, one more thing which I would like to add here is, when you're saying that when the discussions are still on, but it may not fructify, our advice would be that you make an entry, but see, it's not necessary that every entry that is there in the SDD system must result in a disclosure under Regulation 30. This system allows you to maintain a database of price sensitive information which may or may not fructify in future. So you can close that particular item. But if you know that this is being discussed at a very senior level and persons of within the authority, then advice would be to include it. And if it doesn't go ahead with the, I mean, you don't proceed with the that particular news item by putting up a note to the board, you can close this saying not pursued further, because at least, like Varsha said, but during the point in time when the influencers, I would call, are in position or are in discussion with respect to this particular news item, any leakage could result in a price distortion in the market, because these are the people who are influencing the such decisions or taking up such matters in the company. So not necessary that it should always result in regulation 30 announcement to the exchange. You can close that particular thing when you don't proceed further, so that at least you have a record of these information.
And tomorrow when regulator comes and asks you that when this, if some investigation starts and this particular event is under scanner, then you have to produce the documents why you didn't consider this information as UPSI. So better to err on the side of caution. That is the only.
So it means as soon as we have a discussion within the management, we have to enter this the UPSI in our SDD system.
Better.
Manoj,
Okay.
Manoj, just I want to add one thing, that
Yes, sir.
this particular confusion is there, especially among the budding company secretaries. They are getting confused between the relationship between Regulation 30 and SDD entries.
Yes, sir.
Some of them are of the view that every event of Regulation 30, whatever the disclosures are made to the stock exchanges, the entries are to be made in the SDD, which is not so. Per se, whatever the disclosures are being given to stock exchanges under Regulation 30 need not be made the entry in the SDD unless until that information has an impact on your securities or a probable impact in future. So the company secretary or the compliance officer, he has to understand this particular element, that whatever the information which is going to germinate into an UPSI, at what stage it is going to, and what kind of an impact it is going to have it on its securities, then he has to make the entry in the SDD. So per se, it is not so. That is what I want to drive the point to the all the participants.
So, but it is the point is here that the discussion is about the securities only, and whether it is going to be impactful or not, it is very much difficult to decide at that moment of time going to have the impact or not. So, from the regulator perspective, our members are confused. We have to enter the same at the same time when discussion started.
No, so Manoj, one point what you mentioned is perfectly right, because impact on the price will always be known later. It's a hindsight effect, correct? It will never be known. So hence, for a compliance officer for a company, what do you have to do? You have to have a documented approach, both quantitative as well as qualitative. What is it which will, according to you, will be UPSI, both for the purpose of disclosure and both for the purpose of trading window closure? You can have two specific, a different yardstick also, as long as you follow it thoroughly. Okay, and it is, as I mentioned, you got broad bright line test today for quantitative. Follow it, and then you're home and dry. But if you do not have a documented approach, it becomes difficult for you to even say, why are you not treating it as UPSI when the regulator comes knocking at your door?
Absolutely, sir. So in continuation of this, SDD maintained on cloud, as you people have discussed already on this, SDD maintained on cloud, which is taken on rent by the company. Is this valid under SEBI PIT regulation? Question to Basa ma'am.
For this, we have received certain representations, so that matter is still under consideration.
Okay. Moving further, Narayan sir, again, question to you, sir.
Just intervening, may I please request Mr. Narayan Shankar to stop sharing the screen so that we can see all
Sorry,
the speakers.
1 minute. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Is it now clear?
Yeah, it's perfect.
My apologies. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sir, if we update the UPSI effective up to the date after a few days of making the original entry, will that amount to modification first? Second, and would the trail of the same have to be maintained?
So I didn't get the question quite right, but if the question is if you have made an entry and later want to make any changes, once you make an entry, any further entry will be treated as a new entry, but it will be a modification, but it will have to be by way of a new entry only. There is no way you can do anything change to the original entry because that's already made. Because once you have decided a transaction is UPSI, then entries automatically will have to be made. As Gopi also just now mentioned, if for some reason the project is abandoned, not being pursued, the date when the decision is taken of the event abandoned, you can always make. So the answer is yes, that even if you are making any changes, it will be a new entry.
Manoj, it is just like that in the accounting methodology. Once you pass an entry, if it is a wrong entry, you have to reverse that and make a fresh entry. You cannot just remove that voucher from the vouching fence.
So you have to maintain the trail. You have to maintain the trail of
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely.
Any changes, you have to maintain the trail of that. So my another next question is, our company has gone for voluntary delisting, and we have received the final approval from stock exchange. From 27th March 2023, our trading has been suspended. However, the delisting will be considered from 5th April 2023. Since trading has been suspended, so as per my understanding, there will be no requirement of closure of trading window from 1st April 2023. So it is Gopal, sir, this question pertains to you, sir.
The trading window closure, yeah, because you're going to be delisted effectively. That exchange has issued a circular from April 5th that you're going to be compulsory delisted, and then that is okay, because there's not going to be any other trading on the exchange with respect to that.
So that is the 1st April 2023.
Correct. But you must also no, you're saying that the trading window closure from 1st April 2023.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that need not be done, because you're already your promoters are above 90%, and exchanges have already issued a notice of delisting of intent, with a prospective date.
And
right?
trading is suspended also.
Trading is suspended. Right.
Sir, the question is to Sudhakar, sir. If the name of secretarial auditor is entered in the info of designated person for any advice being taken, or name of scrutinizer is being entered for taking consent, can the same person issue certificate of STD to the company?
I don't think there is an issue, because see that anyway, when the auditors are auditing the financial statements, their name is entered in the SDD when you're sharing the information. So here also, if that for any reason, if that information is shared with the secretarial auditor or the scrutinizer, any price sensitive information, their name is entered in the SDD. Tomorrow, can they give a certificate about that compliance, this thing and all? I don't think there is any conflict of interest as such.
No, I agree, Sudhakar, because there is no specific restriction imposed by SEBI in this regard. In fact, invariably, that would be the case, because the secretarial auditor would always have access to the board minutes, and some of them may be UPSI, and his name would automatically be entered. He would be served confidentiality notice. He can definitely certify the ASCR covering compliance of 3.5 and 3.6. I don't think there is any harm in that.
Varsha ma'am, you say on this?
See, I also agree with this thought process, but we will have to review if some kind of this issue is highlighted by the exchanges. But right now, we don't have any other thing to add on that.
Okay. So in continuation with this, Sudhakar sir, will projection and financial data submitted for obtaining credit rating be considered as UPSI? First. Second, receiving credit rating will be considered as UPSI when entry is required to be made.
See, when you are sharing the data for the credit rating purpose with the credit rating agency, your credit rating is certainly an UPSI according to me. So when you are in the advanced stage of sharing the information, and once you have appointed the rating agency and started sharing the information, definitely that is going to be an UPSI according to me. Entries are to be made in the SDD.
Okay, sir. Sir, in continuation with this, whether as part of corrective measures, company can enter the UPSI entry which were missed for any event.
This I have already answered. It can be done because you cannot leave it blank. Suppose for any reason, if you are not entered in the SDD by mistake, by fox pass, or by overlooking whatever it is, and or intentionally also sometimes.
So,
but you cannot leave it like that because tomorrow you will get caught. So better make the entry now so that your the future liability will get reduced at least.
So Manoj, just wanted to add on to what Sudhakar is mentioning. See, the concept, what are we trying to say? Delayed compliance is definitely better than no compliance, correct?
Yes.
Because currently, see, SEBI has not mentioned any timelines for entering, but it is expected that it is at least done within a reasonable time. Gopi also alluded to when he was mentioning. But you have to remember that SDD entries can be delayed, and even if you think later on. But where the company will get into a problem is, today, retrospectively, how are you going to close the trading window? It looks difficult. Retrospectively, how are you going to give notice of confidentiality? Because every UPSI comes with the responsibility of saying, I will close trading window, I will serve a confidentiality notice. If it comes under regulation 3.3, there has to be an NDA, an agreement. How are those going to be compliant will always be a question.
But another thing I would like to add here is, Manoj, is that the entries what you are making today, it should have been the entries what you were making at that point of time. Because the purpose is that tomorrow when the regulator comes for an investigation or inspection, that point of time, the purpose of entry in the SDD is audit trail. So this entries what we are making today, which were missed out earlier, is for the purpose of audit trail. So you cannot change that nature, or you cannot give a different color to the transaction. Only thing is, yes, certain things you cannot do it, as Narayan Shankar rightly mentioned, that confidentiality agreement after 3 years you cannot enter into when you are making the entry today. But certain things what you can do and what you could do it, you have to do it.
So to put it differently, Manoj, what probably the question is, I have followed everything. That means I have considered it as UPSI, I have closed the trading window, I have issued confidentiality notice. It is only that I have forgotten to enter in SDD. And can I enter it now? Answer is yes. Delayed compliance is definitely better than no compliance at all.
But sir, our regulator is going to take it as a non-compliance and going to issue a notice for this.
So as I said, if you have genuinely not done, at least enter it. You can always, you'll have to put in your face, you'll have to put in your version as to why. And it is then definitely for the regulator to consider your arguments. But better than no confidence, but better than avoiding it. The day, see, what is Lata Didi taught us, jahan pe savera ho, wahi pe, correct? Whatever the language.
On the lighter side, Manoj wants to say, should we do "Aa bail mujhe maar"?
That is the main point.
No, but the point is versa. If you have not entered, it is versa because they know it is UPSI. If you are treated as a UPSI, non-entry is versa than delayed entry, is what I feel. Definitely.
Sir, it's okay from our side. We are intently doing the good. But whether regulator is going to accept that intent is perfect or not, point is here, because we have done the default by not entering the data at that point of time when it should be. And now we are entering the same. Whether regulator is taking this in right perspective, because we are entering in rightfully. So,
Manoj, if you are going to treat this session as advanced ruling from regulators, I think it will be too much of an expectation.
Yes, I'm moving to next question, sir.
Only one thing.
Oh my God. Isn't it?
So before, you want to say?
Only one thing I would like to say,
Okay.
with the experience, if I put myself in the regulator's shoes, if I have to answer this question,
Sir.
I will not completely give you a pardon. but I will definitely reduce the rigor because your intent, your honesty is there, your intention is good.
Yeah.
Because there was a mistake, and there is a difference between mistake and putting it under the carpet.
Sir.
Okay, if you are trying to put it under the carpet, I will deal
Then
with
it
you
is okay.
separately. If your intention is good, but there was a mistake, I will deal with you separately. That is all.
Absolutely, sir.
In fact, Manoj, when you go for consent terms before SEBI, the regulator, one of the first things the regulator has to have you rectified that non-compliance.
Yes, correct.
So when you are doing for consent terms, also it will help you to say that I have so much rectified it, for at least proving your point. Go ahead.
Same is the case with condemnation also. Before you're going for a condemnation, you have to rectify your mistake and then you can go for condemnation.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, so we are having a lot of questions coming in from our participants. So before I take up the next one, I would like to let all of you know that close to 13,000 participants are, watching this webinar at the moment. So so I have a few questions which I would throw open so that you may decide to take it up, and we really have to do it quickly because there are a lot of questions. So since the designated persons are liable to enter information about sharing the UPSI in SDD, will the compliance officer still be held liable for non-disclosure of UPSI and SDD software shared by such designated person to the third party?
Yes, to a large extent, compliance officer will be held responsible. That's why I said that, in fact, he has to sensitize the senior management, he has to sensitize the board, he has to also sensitize all concerned people, create awareness about the compliances as far as PIT regulations and SDD is concerned. Because at the end of the day, he is the compliance officer as far as these regulations are concerned.
Yeah.
He cannot escape his responsibility. That's what my view is.
True. Okay. Thank you so much. So if we have disclosed any events to stock exchange, whether we need to make an entry of the same, in UPSI SDD, do we need to give notice of trading window closure to the relative of designated persons and maintain the data of the relatives too in the SDD?
So this we had answered in my earlier session when I was providing my session also, that it is for the company to decide what is UPSI in terms of PIT regulations. So that is clearly number one. With regard to relatives of designated persons, it is generally we close the trading window for the designated person, and it is for the designated person to ensure that the relatives do not trade while the trading window is closure. What you have to understand, it is not that the designated person can pass on UPSI to the relatives. He has only to make a mention that the trading window is closed for me, and hence through the designated person, the relatives will have to be controlled, not directly. Next, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So next is, what is the link between the circulation of UPSI within the organization and closure of trading window? Does each time we record the circulation of UPSI or within or outside the organization, we have to close the trading window when the employees in an organization work on UPSI, which they cannot do unless they have information whether UPSI or not? What is the logic behind the recording of UPSI amongst the employees designated persons when all these employees are designated persons and records of all these designated persons are maintained by the organization?
So I think probably this gentleman, whoever the person is asking, is slightly confused. There is one concept of designated person and one is access to UPSI. Merely because you're a designated person doesn't mean you have access to all the UPSI. Out of the designated people who have access to UPSI will have to enter in the SDD, correct? Regulation 3, which is the charging provision, covers both internal and external. That means communication of procurement of UPSI will have to be on a need to know basis, both internally or externally. Hence, even if you are doing internally, you have to enter in the data in the database. Even server access, which I said, whether it is in SAP or ERP, from the first day of the quarter, succeeding the quarter, even that will have to be entered. So hence, it is a fallacy to think that I already have a list of designated persons and I don't have to enter in the SDD. Access to UPSI, sharing of UPSI will have to be entered.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next question is, does the admin or the compliance officer need to share the login details of the software for the purpose of secretarial audit? On what basis will they mention the compliance being done by the company in the annual secretarial compliance report?
See, I don't think you have to share the what's called a login of SDD with the secretarial auditor, because secretarial auditor is to be provided the information as much as what is required. And at the same point of time, because sometimes what happens is people, the compliance officer may consciously or unconsciously put the entire UPSI, the UPSI information on the SDD itself. Then what will happen is that whoever is the persons having the access, they will get the entire information. According to me, only the nature of UPSI is to be entered into SDD, not the entire information as such. But sometimes people do make this mistake. Am I correct, Narayan?
No, Sudhakar, completely. The same question was answered by exchanges even when it came to certification to stock exchange. We said only those projects or UPSI which is in public domain will have to be given as part of the certification to the exchange. And hence you will have to have your own system to ensure that those UPSI which is not yet in public domain doesn't goes to the hand of the secretarial auditor also equally. And companies are trying to do it in different ways, or even by using technology. For example, the movement UPSI, many of the companies, what they're doing is, there is one more, even if you don't know the end date, the moment it is made public, in that particular column, they will enter the date of disclosure, and 48 hours after, automatically the system will take care. That means once it is in public, the prints which you give of the SDD entries will automatically cover that project. But if you have not put that in, it is a clear indication that it is still not in public domain, and that print will automatically be not given to the secretarial auditor. So there are various ways and means of addressing this.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying.
Only one thing I want to add, Rupanjana, is even the secretarial auditors also, sometimes they are asking for the login credentials of the SDD unconsciously, because they were thinking that because they are going to certify a particular thing, they need to have the login credentials. According to me, it is in their own interest. They should not take the login credentials, because they will also become part and parcel of the whole thing otherwise.
Exactly.
Or if anything happens, that they will also be held responsible for that kind of a...
That needed clarification. So thanks for that. I'll quickly take two questions before passing on to Mr. Purbe, my colleague. So a private limited company is currently going on merger, and soon it is going to get listed on stock exchange post merger. At what stage such private limited company is called as proposed to be listed company, and at what stage does such private limited company needs to commence maintaining SDD? Is it the time of filing a scheme with ROC for in form GNL 1, or is it at the time of filing INC 28, whether it is where it is filing certified copy of NCLT approving merger?
So if you take a clue of proposed to be listed, where guidance has been given to say that if you have filed your offer documents, correct, your DRHP, etc., that could probably be an indication. Similarly, mere filing of the scheme, because scheme does take a definite time, so you will have to really define when you're going, when the scheme is probably approved, and between that approval and effective date, you will come into the bucket of proposed to be listed. Because once you file the form, if the scheme is effective, and you are already getting into the third bucket, correct? But between the order somewhere and be making it effective, you will have to take a call.
Okay, thank you so much. Our company has gone for voluntary delisting, and we have received the final approval from stock exchanges. From 27th March 2023, our trading has been suspended.
No, this was already covered by Manoj, I think, to Gopi. Next.
Okay. So, is closure of trading window and investor interaction related, even if information shared in investor interaction is information generally available to the public?
No, so one thing is basis for any analyst or media interaction, only those information which is publicly available will be shared. In fact, the moment you give an interaction with the analyst, it is simultaneously the presentation is uploaded in the stock exchange website also, so that you meet the acid test of uniform dissemination of information. And at no point of time there can be allegation of selective information being leaked to one sect of an analyst to the other. So at any point of time, basic principle, only public information, and for some reason you blurt out something or there is some information, immediately put simultaneously on the stock exchange website so that you are able to meet that test of uniform dissemination of information.
Okay, thank you so much. One last before I pass it on, whether application in NCLT by creditors, not admission, are UPSI and need to be entered in SDD.
Application, sorry, go ahead. Sudhakar.
It is about
I think it
IBC.
is entered
sir.
in SDD. Because they have initiated the action in the NCLT. Okay, that it will
Insolvency.
definitely have an impact on the price of the shares, and the SDD is to be, the entry is to be made accordingly.
Sir.
So Manojji, please, please take it up.
My question to Sir Gopi sir, the practical difficulties generally facing by the all company compliance company secretaries. Bankers do not give bankers do not give their PAN, and we are regularly interacting with the bankers on this UPSI. Sir, in that case, how we are going to deal with this?
This is a catch-22. The regulator will have to say, because PAN is mandatory. As per the regulation, very clearly mandates that if you are sharing the UPSI.
Absolutely, Gopi, absolutely, it is mandatory. So Manoj, if bank, first of all, what is it which you're sharing with the bank? If what you're sharing is mere projection, as we rightly said, all projections and budgets are not UPSI. But for some reason, if you have shared UPSI, then the bank's PAN will have to be mentioned, and the official dealing in the said bank, his PAN also will have to be mentioned. In fact, banks will also be under the purview of the definition of connected person. And if you see, Manoj, SEBI has even the 23rd March 23. SEBI has once again clarified that company can only deal with banks, intermediaries, and persons who deals with UPSI only if they themselves have formulated a code under PIT. So you have to ensure that they also have a code because they are dealing with UPSI, correct? And once they are also governed, no way the banks can tell that I am not going to give you a PAN.
Very tricky things. Sir, again, my next question to Gopal sir. Are the statutory auditor or the internal auditor required to maintain SDD first? If yes, in which format? Second, and are the respective companies required to ensure that from the statutory auditor or internal auditor?
The statutory auditors will be required to maintain this database at their end, because they would be receiving so many price sensitive information during this particular audit. And in what format to be maintained, it must be in the same format as is the requirement specified, 3.5 and 3.6, whatever is the requirement, in that same format. Because you may be interacting with one person at the statutory auditor's place, but internally they must have a system in place with respect to sharing of that particular information, maybe on need to know basis for the purpose of audit. So they will need to maintain it the same manner that a company is required to maintain under 3.5, 3.6.
And what's about, sir, internal auditor?
See, any person, internal auditor also is also belonging to the company, right? I mean,
Sir,
you have appointed the internal auditor. So price sensitive information with respect to these entities, professional organizations must have this. See, SDD is nothing but a discipline. It's only a discipline to ensure that whatever information that you receive is maintained within the organization and doesn't leak out. I mean, there are checks and balances to ensure that the information doesn't go out, and there is a controlled mechanism for dealing with such information. So professional organization must definitely maintain SDD at their end so that they have full control on the information that they receive from their clients, especially the listed clients.
Just to add what Gopi sir has mentioned is that sometimes it so happened that internal auditors are also appointed outsiders. Okay, the chartered accountant firms, big chartered accountant firms do accept internal audits also. So they have to maintain that point of time. The SDD, the way they maintain for statutory audits.
So, sir, is there any obligation of the company to ensure this from the internal auditor or statutory auditor?
No, there is no obligation as far as the company is concerned, because it is the responsibility, because they comes under the intermediaries and fiduciaries. They are also having the responsibility under the regulations itself. Tomorrow, if they are not doing that, they will be held responsible and they will get the penal consequences.
Sir.
As far as the company is concerned, they don't need to ensure that whether they are maintaining it or not.
In continuation of this, if in a scheduled board meeting, financial result and dividend are to be approved for which same data is being shared, is there a need to create two separate events in SDD?
Not required.
Financial
You can have
result
one
and
entry
dividend.
itself. See, again, the same thing. What is the purpose? Purpose is the price sensitivity of the
Price
information. So you can make one financial results and the dividend thereon. There is no need to have the separate two entries. Even if you want to make it, you can do that also.
My next question is, sir, what is the difference between PAC, person acting in concert, and promoter in listed companies, and how the insider trading tracked perhaps by PAC and promoters under mysterious circumstances?
So I think, I don't know the question if I'm right. A person who is a part of or acting in concert, or what is the definition of acting in concert? Commonality of objective with the promoters, correct, in terms of working in tandem. If they are, they will belong to what you call the promoter group. And as Varsha ma'am has clearly mentioned, there is a difference between system-driven disclosure and structured digital database. Under the system-driven disclosure, the listed company have to provide information including PAN number of promoter group. Here the PACs will also get covered, designated persons and directors, and subsequent to which, and this is given to the designated depository which the companies have selected in terms of the May 2018 circular. And this is also the basis or framework for restricting trading by DPs currently for financial. Right now, it is only for financial reserves. As regards structured digital database, if you are sharing up information with the ND, and if he is part of the promoter, it doesn't mean that automatically the entire promoter group or PACs are also coming to know about it. Answer is certainly not.
So this problem arises at the time of takeover of the companies.
Okay.
So the segregation of these two entities is very much difficult at that point of time, person acting in concert and promoter of the company. Because
no, but we are confusing with takeover regulation, and this topic today is absolutely UPSI and SDD, correct?
Sir.
So what I wanted to merely clarify, it has got no connection with SDD. Proper, as I said, if at all the confusion is because under system-driven disclosure, listed companies are required to provide PAN of promoter and all members of promoter group. That is to be given to the designated depository. That's why I wanted to clarify. And Varsha ma'am has very nicely in the beginning itself in her session clarified the difference between system-driven disclosure and structured digital database.
Absolutely, sir. In continuation with this, where there are lapses in identifying instances of sharing UPSI and the software adopted by the company for the purpose of SDD allows for an entry by mentioning the actual date of sharing, will the same will be considered as a deviation?
So I think we've already answered in the earlier also. Delayed compliance. Yeah, we've already discussed delayed compliance is better than non-compliance.
Sir, if there are multiple group of companies, they share common server, but have internal segregation for each company on access control. Can these companies host the SDD on the same server?
It can be.
we had discussed, Sudhakar, even when we were doing the manual on SDD, and where we said that right now there's no prohibition for the company to maintain SDD of group companies, so that there is adequate firewalls, we said, to distinguish SDD of each company on the server.
And only thing, Manoj, what they have to ensure is that one company's official should not have the access to the other company's information.
Yeah, that's right. Firewalls is a must.
Firewalls are to be there, that internal control should be there. As far as the same server is concerned, it can be maintained. No problem at all.
We have
And
to.
I want to add here one thing, that
Yes.
suppose the regulator is asking for the data. So at that time, nobody should come up with that excuse ki because of sharing the same server, our data is commingled or we are not able to segregate, we are not able to provide you that data.
Agree.
That option is not there. So make sure if you are doing any such thing, then your data is practically segregated.
Absolutely. So what Varsha is trying to say, the leeway provided should not be taken to your advantage and then use the same reason against. Absolutely.
Sir, my last question. Presently, most of the company use maintain data on cloud server. That we have at the beginning of the things we have discussed on this, but still I am putting this question. Presently, most of the company use maintain data on cloud server, and accordingly, SDD data maintain on cloud server. And as per policy and agreement, service provider cannot access the company data. Service provider cannot access the company data without credential. As per regulation, is this okay for SDD compliance?
So I think Gopi, Varsha ma'am has already clearly said, and the basic logic, database servers provided by third-party vendors, whether in India, outside India, will not be considered as internally. It will be considered as outsourced. If it is hosted on the cloud server of the company and not service provider, that is, the service provider is not in a position to access the server or entries made, probably it can be permitted, but as both of them said, it is under active consideration. Right now, it will be too early for us to comment.
Okay, absolutely. So over to Rupanjana.
So my next question would be whether SDD can be considered as maintained through Outlook email by creating one common email ID and at the time of sharing UPSI, keeping CC to that email ID.
So definitely not, Rupanjana. Emails cannot be considered as SDD. STD has to be through a software with internal controls and checks such as time stamping, audit trails. This is certainly an absolute no.
And not only that, information is to be shared. UPSI is to be shared only on need to know basis. You cannot just put it in the group across like this, the way you are proposing.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So the next question would be, what is the trigger point for recording UPSI in case of a merger and acquisition, since there will be many discussions before finalizing the target company and many parties would be involved in the transactions?
It's already answered, Narayan.
So I had already taken up Rupanjan as part of my presentation.
Okay.
So if for a merger, when the scheme is ready to be taken for approval of the board, you'll have to at least at that time say it is ready. And when it comes to acquisition, I have also given several cases how when information starts taking shape of the probability of the transaction going ahead is higher than not going ahead, and impact on your price and your internal threshold for quantitative and qualitative all together will have to be decided on the UPS status of that particular transaction.
Okay.
See that, though actually, Rupanjan, I want to add it that Narayan is a bit liberal, saying that, at the time of drafting the scheme, according to me, it is much before that the entry is to be made in the SDD. Suppose tomorrow, if you are not going ahead with that, then make that the same entry that we are not going ahead with that particular proposal. The reason being, before drafting the scheme, lot of water is already flown under the bridge.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So if there is entry made in the SDD software for UPSI event, but later on that said event does not materialize, then should it be reported in the quarterly certificate?
So once you decide that a particular transaction UPSI, entries will have to be made. That's what the basic principle we said. Gopi also alluded to the point that if a project is abandoned or not being pursued, the date when the decision is taken that this transaction is abandoned will have to be entered in the SDD. So the answer is definitely yes, with a note stating that the date when it is abandoned, please enter in the SDD again.
Okay, okay.
Because, see, the logic for that, Rupanjana, is that abandonment itself is going to have an impact on your share price.
Okay. Thank you. And the next one is, in case of banks, branch auditors are appointed on a yearly basis for audit of branches, and they have access to various confidential information or which may or may not be price sensitive, where a bank appoints more than 250 auditors, whether all of them will become designated persons by default and will be required to abide by window closure formalities.
No, the bank will need to ensure that it follows its internal code of conduct, Schedule C, because if the bank is going to deal with UPSI, it will also have to have its own code. If the auditors are going to be privy to UPSI, then they will have to be served with confidentiality notice, trading window closure, as well as entries in SDD. Of course, like the question, I think, mentions that information is confidential, but every confidential information need not be at UPSI, correct? So hence it is for the banks to decide which of those confidential information is UPSI and which of the 250 auditors which you mentioned has got UPSI, and all will depend on that.
Okay, thank you so much. The next one, statutory auditors generally do not provide their personal email ID for information sharing, but there is a group ID which is accessed by many. So how do we enter PAN in connection with that email ID?
So email ID is a communication channel which is not required to be part of SDD. Okay. However, PAN is required for recording the database. And if you are recording names of the people with PAN, all those people who have access to that email, which is a common group, the people underlying that names with PAN will have to be entered.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. For newly listed companies, is there any relaxation for SDD implementation? Considering that most of these companies will have to set up the infrastructure for installation of SDD software.
No.
Answer appears to be no, but Gopi.
No, you have to have it in place right from day one.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Madam Agarwal, you wanted to add to that?
I was saying, even if you are proposed to be listed, then also you are supposed to maintain. The newly listed, there is no such exemption.
Okay. Thank you. Whether UPSI information is to be added in SDD for assignments such as bonus issue, right issue, merger, etc., after intimation given under Regulation 30 on stock exchange or before that?
Oh my God, this is quite, after end of the day, this question is asked. It's slightly surprising. As we said, whether it is bonus, rights, mergers, all will come under the definition of UPSI. When is disclosure made? Disclosure is last of the event when the trading window is actually ready to be opened and not closed. So when is trading window closed? When you are initiating the project, correct? At that time, you are closing the window, NDA is being served, and enter in the SDD. And when you disclose to the stock exchange, immediately 48 hours after, you are ready to open. So companies should not, compliance officers should not confuse that I am going to make entries. In fact, I think Varsha Gopi alluded to this point, that even when you are entering, I think Gopi mentioned that in some cases he has seen that people entering in the SDD even after the information being public. So SDD must be made immediately the moment UPSI is germinated and not wait for a disclosure under Regulation 30.
Rupanjana, I have one submission to you and Mr. Manoj as well as to ICSI through you, is that considering the complexity of this particular subject and the kind of questions what we are getting, we had 3 to 4 webinars on the same subject last year. This year we have 2 webinars. All the 6-7 webinars, whatever are there. Why can't you put it under one umbrella on the website of ICSI? No doubt about it, they are available on the ICSI YouTube. But if they are available under one particular umbrella like SDD, the entire gamut of information as well as FAQs, manual, this, that, whatnot and all, including the videos, it will be quite helpful to the people.
There are plans to do so, like these things this has already been discussed, so they will be done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I have another question. The company had maintained SDD in Excel sheet from April 20 to March 2022, as there was no clarity on maintaining SDD. From 1st April 2022, the company had SDD in place as per PIT regulations. Is there any non-compliance from the company's side?
Gopi.
See, definitely maintaining it in Excel is not, I mean, it's pretty clear that it's not a database. Okay.
Mhm.
Having maintained it in Excel for that particular period of time, let that be a record. But like Narayan Shankar also said, let them, once the SDD is in place, they may port that data into the SDD database so that there is a better control on that in particular information in the system.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. If we are forwarding financials to the registered valuer for valuation of equity shares, do we need to enter SDD?
If financials are UPSI, if it is being given, please enter. In fact, whether it is registered valuers, credit rating agencies, all these people generally, as part of your legitimate purpose policy, you enter all these names generally as people who have got a right or are breaching the need to know. Generally, it is part of that, and when you are giving, please serve him with the confidentiality notice. Please ensure that he make necessary entries in the SDD.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Now, this again is related to insolvency. If a company is suspended and CIRP is initiated, in that case, SDD be maintained internally or software is mandatory?
So I think stock exchange, if I'm not mistaken, had also clarified this, that, what is regulation 3.5? It is a duty on the board to ensure that SDB is mentioned. And if you see the Jan 2018 circular issued by IBBI, it makes it mandatory for the resolution professional also to ensure compliance with all applicable laws. And even under a company, even if a company is under a CIRP, it will have to maintain SDD. There's no leeway for that.
Okay. Thank you. If there are certain softwares which have control over or have some inbuilt system enabling to share vital information to particular people, thereby getting advantage for privy to such knowledge, will there be any security check on such software?
So we have clarified software can definitely not be accessed by outside person. Purchasing of if you're purchasing a software, that is allowed, provided you maintain it internally. You have to ensure that the server access of the software must be on the IT system of the company and not service provider. If the service provider, at all times, you should ensure they are never in a position to access the server or entries made in the database.
See, the only thing, Narayan, if I understand the question correctly, they were saying is, if they put a bug of hacking your data at the time of giving the software itself, then what will happen is the question, if I am not wrong. So for that, definitely you have to depend upon your internal IT team. If they are not competent enough, you have to engage somebody to ensure that that particular software is not having these kind of bugs.
Okay.
So it's a cyber breach, you're saying, so that you'll have to...
cyber breach.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I have one question directed towards Mr. Gopal Krishnan Iyer and Madam Varsha. So how the company or the compliance officer will come to know the software it is using is not tampered? Can the stock exchange or SEBI will empanel vendors whose software is not tampered or cannot be tampered?
So one thing is exchanges and SEBI will not be getting into empaneling of vendors, because that's a third party thing. We will not be. Second, how the compliance officer will know whether the tampering is permitted or not? See, before he installs the software, he would need to test that system, right? He would ask for a demonstration of that product. So he need to ask all these questions, and he should probably do a hands-on on that particular software to be sure that It has all the capabilities which are required to be undertaken under the regulations. So merely going by the word may not suffice. So you need to take a demo and then see the product before you shortlist the vendor who's been using this.
And also, Rupanjana, while you are buying the software in the contract itself, you stipulate stringent legal penal provisions for any kind of cyber breach or data breach.
See, when you are running a company, you will be installing many other software systems and all. So whatever requirements, whatever precautions you are taking in other systems and software, same has to be taken here. There is nothing specific.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have one last question. If you could tell us, for our viewers, certain non-financial events that can be considered as UPSI and needing recording under SDD.
So I thought I had covered this as part of my session also, as to saying that UPSI is a inclusive definition, and while it includes financial results, it will include many other things. And some examples which I gave is other than financial results and dividend, is there a change in capital structure? Is there any change in KMP? Mergers, demergers, acquisitions. We talked about delisting, disposal and expansion of business, major business deal, major business deal or transaction. If you are going through a major write-off or a major impairment or any major accounting which is going to have an impact on your P&L, we talked about bonus, rights issue, buyback. There are multiple other than financial statements, correct? Because a UPSI is an inclusive definition.
Yeah, exactly. So while I mentioned the last question to be the earlier question to be the last one, I received 4 questions back to back. And so I have requested Team ICSI to, not to accept anymore. So I'll just ask these questions. In case of appointment of managing director or whole-time director after 5 years, will it be considered UPSI?
That means you're talking about reappointment of the MD?
Yes.
But the reappointment of MD, I don't think will come into that IA because there is no change in KMP, correct?
Yeah.
Why should it be? No.
Okay, thank you. Whether a company can change the SDD tool in between, like changing the software, whether it is allowed?
I don't know, Gopi. Even if they are changing, you will have to have rules of migration from the old to the new software, correct? You'll have to have some to that.
Ultimately, objective of SDD is to maintain the data for the audit trail purpose. Okay, software is nothing but doing the same thing, whatever is required in the regulations. So whether it is A software or B software, according to me, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the information required should be captured.
No, Sudhakar, I was asking Gopi the checks and balances which they would be looking. Okay. If you're migrating to a new software, and what is it which they would be looking at? That was the point I was asking Gopi.
See, actually, the issue that may arise here is you have maintained database A for a particular period of time with proper audit trail, time stamping, everything. Now, if you are going to adopt a new software now, you got to port that data into the new software where the time stamping may not be the same, because the time stamping may get changed to what is there in this system. So I don't know how you would.
So that's why, Gopi, probably your answer is that even if you're changing, ensure that your existing entries are grandfathered. Correct. You can't change that. Okay. I think those checks and balances the company will have to put in place.
Okay. Thank you. If the whole-time director of a listed company resigns with effective date of resignation more than 3 months away, at what stage does the company need to give intimation to the stock exchange? Is it the time of resignation or at the actual date of resignation? Is SDD certificate submission to stock exchange applicable? I think that's a different question put together. Right or yeah.
So I will answer it generally. It doesn't make a difference whether it is an MD or a ED or a whole-time director, if there is a resignation by the managing director or whole-time director, that unlike a non-executive director, it will have to go through the NRC and board. There is an acceptance, correct? Initially, there will be dialogue with the MD to say whether he can, what is the reason before accepting. The moment he gives and the NRC and the board has considered, you will have to intimate to the stock exchange to saying that, yes, this is it. And this is the date from which the person will cease to be an MD, correct? And the moment you are internally aware, this is a change in UPS, a change in KMP, which comes under the inclusive definition of UPSI. Please ensure that the team who's aware, ring fence them, close their trading window, name it as a project, serve a confidentiality notice, make entries in SDD. And when you disclose, and after that disclosure, it becomes in public domain.
Okay, thank you. So this is the confirmed last question.
Oh.
When we issue compliance certificate on SDD, then we need to mention how many transactions happened during quarter. So we should count only published UPSI, or we should count abandoned or inactive entries or two for the certificate.
The only caution which we had mentioned for UPSI reporting, the SDD reporting, those transactions which are not in public domain, please do not make it as part of the reporting to the stock exchange. Only those which are in public domain needs to be going to the stock exchange and not otherwise.
Okay, thank you so much. So I would pass it on to my colleague, Mr. Purve now.
You're on mute, Manoj. Manoj, you're on mute.
Thank you, sir. Before giving vote of thanks, one question from my last question. This is final one from my side, because queries raised by the industry in various numbers. Sir, question is, in case a company has a practice of having an updated, just a minute, sir. Having an updated call with the board members in the form of an informal video conferencing call, wherein monthly performance is updated to the board members. We understand that since UPSI is being shared to them, their details as received of UPSI is entered in SDD. However, no separate trading window closure notice is sent to the participating directors. Please advise whether trading window needs to be closed all the time for some set of person holding UPSI.
So I think this was also one of the guidance which SEBI had given in one of the case. Monthly volumes, even when you're doing monthly volumes, there was one particular case where they said monthly volumes is also taking shape as UPSI. Many of the companies have got a practice of disclosing monthly volumes. So till the time it is disclosed and the board members are aware, please ensure that you close the trading window for them, confidentiality notice is served, and make a mention. Till the time it is disclosed, they will neither trade nor disclose, correct? And once it is disclosed to the stock exchange, the monthly volumes, which goes, and after 48 hours, you can lift the window. It doesn't make whether it is informal or formal. Transmission of UPSI color doesn't change basis informal or formal.
Thank you, sir. With this thing, I am giving the vote of thank, and really it is my honor and privilege to have with this esteemed panelist. And sir, start with the first of all, I would like to thank our Vice President, Mr. B. Narasimhan, and it is my privilege and honor to have with him, and he is my council colleague. So first of all, the effort put it by him, absolutely tremendous, because he is always towards the SEBI, he is always towards the BSE, NSE, CDSL, NSDL, everywhere, wherever we required his help, he is ready to give. And more so, he is knowing every person on tips. So for this reason, you have to contact him. For this reason, you have to contact them. So it is really honor for me to honor him. Second, I'd like to congratulate our moderator, second our colleague Rupanjana Day, moderating the webinar, and we had tried our best. Thank you, Rupanjana. The views of panelists on the topic and their words of knowledge have been quite illuminated, covering all the technical and critical aspects of SDD. And this topic is still our company secretary required more knowledge, more things, because the UPSI and germinating point for that UPSI is very much technical and very much difficult to judge at what time of things we have to make it the UPSI and enter into the SDD. So for this reason, as suggested by Sudhakar sir, we are going to certainly going to consider this and going to a separate segment in our ICSI portal for this particular purpose. And as I am part of the IT team, so I'm trying to do this thing on the separately in our portal so that our members get updated with all these things. And I would like to take this opportunity to express my deep gratitude towards Balsa ma'am, because she is the regulator and on regular basis she is giving time to our ICSI and our members, and in turn she is helping to industry. So once again, thanks ma'am for giving to support to all our members and our industry. I would like to thank Gopal sir. I had personally met him and he is so generous, so knowledgeable and full of things. And every time he is ready to give every bit of things to our professionals whenever we require. Thank you, sir. Thank you giving your presence. My next vote of thanks to our beloved Sudhakar sir. Whenever ICSI, ICI, any professional body wants him to deliberate on any particular topic, he is ready to give the time and ready to give the deliberation, and his deliberation is absolutely tremendous. Awesome. And the way he's explaining the matters, it is really privilege for me and honor for the ICSI and our members. So once again, thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable time. Always available for this ICSI. My next thank to Sir Narayan sir. Really, the way you had discussed on this SDD, it is tremendous, remarkable, because your input and your point as a merchant banker, I am understanding what you are saying, and this is required to our fraternity for our company secretaries, because we are lacking on this point, because we are the between regulator and industry. So if we are in a position to understand and deliver, then regulator is happy and we people are also good happy, because under 447 of the Companies Act, we are very much liable. So SDD thing is very much sticky for us. What is the price sensitive information? It is very much difficult to explain, and ultimate responsibility lies with the compliance officer as a KMP sir. So thank you sir for your valuable feedback, and very much thankful to ICSI ki sir aapne always you had given time to us. Thanks sir. At the end, I also thank all the participants for watching this webinar through various social media. Now this number is beyond 40,000. So really this topic is very much important. However, might be some people are taking this as a credit hours, but I don't think so, because it is just 1 hour.
It is just 1 hour. It is just 1 hour. So not for credit hours.
That's why people are kept 1 hour. So people participate who is really interested in this. So thank you to everyone, either from the panelist side and from the whosoever be watching from where.
Manoj, before you conclude, Manoj, let me also propose a very hearty vote of thanks to you as well as to Rupanjana.
Absolutely.
And also to the ICSI Secretariat for wonderfully organizing this webinar, which is benefited to all of us. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you so much. We would definitely like to have you again in future. I'm sure after today's webinar, there will be demand for more. And we will put up this ward for having this, and this has already been in principle decided by the council. So, but of course, we might have another soon. So, thanks to all of you from my side also.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, Varsha, Gopi, Sudhakar.
Thanks,
Manoj
Manoj.
and-
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sudhakar.
Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj. Thanks,
Thank you.
Rupachana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Varsha.